Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is a great, good-looking crowd. And thanks, Retreat, for inviting me. And Rod, once again, for his marvelous introduction. So I'm going to read from Their Blue Drowning. As Rod mentioned, the book will be published by Frog Hollow Press this December. It's been a curious project. This book continues to grow. It started as a chapbook, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago, and then it grew into a poetry manuscript, a full-length poetry manuscript. And even after that, it's grown into its current incarnation, which you'll get some exposure to in a few minutes. And so we're at the publication stage now. We're working on the layout and doing some editorial work. But even here, it continues to grow. Carol Peters is both the publisher and the book designer at Frog Hollow. And those of you familiar with the press's publication will know the fine quality of Carol's work. But Carol has invited Frances Hunter to collaborate with her on her Blue Drowning. And Frances is another very gifted and award-winning book designer. And if that wasn't enough, they'll be using several of my wife's, Francoise's, paintings for the cover art and for some of the painting internally in the book. So, like I said, it continues to grow. So meanwhile, I'm working with Shane Nielsen, who's editing the manuscript. And Shane is both a very fine editor and a very talented poet in his own right. So in the interest of time, I won't say much about the book tonight. We'll be launching the book here at Tree sometime in the new year, and I'll speak more about the inspiration and the creative process at that time. For tonight, I think all you really need to know is that the book is a narrative, both in prose and verse, that examines a relationship between a man, Stanley Harris, and a woman, Ondine Livingstone, as they move through courtship, marriage, separation, and reconciliation. The book, therefore, is divided in sections that follow this chronology. Tonight, I won't try to give you the entire story, but we'll read from the prologue and the first few poems from the first section. The prologue alludes to the 19th century German legend of Undine, the tragic water nymph. There are versions of the Undine legend in many other cultures, but I was attracted to the themes and the imagery of the story as told in Teutonic folklore. I mentioned earlier that the narrative in Their Blue Drowning is unfolded in both prose and poetry. In fact, the two forms are presented on the same page, with the prose working to provide an access point to the accompanying poem, and the poem expressing the narrative of the prose in a more metaphoric manner. So I know that it's got to be a bit cloudy, and we'll clarify that as I read from the manuscript. There's also a handful of what I call dialogue poems throughout the book. These are poetic exchanges between Ondine and Stanley. And there are a couple of poems of this sort that I'll read tonight. These poems, I find, have a dramatic dimension to them. And so I think you can sense that one of the subtexts to the book is this exploration of various literary genres and the potential in combining them to deliver a unique form of narrative. So Their Blue Drowning, prologue. Bound to this temporal world, Undine weds a mortal husband for love, to gain a soul and know thereby the salvation of life after death. But she fears human frailty, and the anguish of her vulnerability is a clock somewhere, tolling the hour, turning day into night. Undine. Of waves she sang, and the caressing cries of shoreline, ancient rock tense with desire. Her song phrased to the moon's timeless cycle, the medleyed voice of water flowing into water, yet ever mindful of the cool paling, how the hand that holds and loves to embrace also measures time, dividing day into hours. Moon lingers in the morning sky. Forlorn night, her lover, impatiently awaits her arrival. Defenseless in love, Undine ponders the moon's imprudence, and given the vagaries of human relations, frets the permanence of her soul. Fidelity. Long into morning, the moon is a paling presence, while somewhere night's sky paces the empty hours. Wed, Undine wakes, crescent and trembling, feels the air for fear of her soul's blue drowning, and ponders the moon's indiscretions when night is a dark moor, perplexed in the extreme. Undine believes in the human potential for selfless love, perhaps to a fault, perhaps because in her precarious situation, there can be no other worldview. Arcadia. She dreams of Pan, delighting the gods, inspiring fear in lonely places, and of Syrinx, aided by water nymphs, bending to the wind, her back a supple reed, and of moons larger than skies, lighting the wooded paths of night, where songbirds flock in orchestrated air, and angels, garlanded black, dance the day's dead into the afterworld. First meetings. This is the first section. This is the first time Undine Livingstone has chaired an interdisciplinary study group, and the prospects excite her. The diversity is remarkable, she tells her mother over the phone. We have mathematicians, philosophers, physicists, you name it, even an ornithologist. Her mother is pleased, but also concerned about the potential for interference with the archaeological research for which Undine already has internationally been recognized. Don't worry, mother. It's been smooth sailing so far. And in fact, we're finding ways to increase the conduct of research at the university. Running the wind. In hurried departure, she whispers commands. Her voice a faint wash of yellow, the oarsman straining, and crosses an ancient sea of sunken fleets, once flagged and manifested, their lucrative cargoes destined for trade, abandoned to run light before untiring winds, indifferent to dominant stars, telling constellations, the blue faint of waves. And the relics Undine finds on her expeditions are mysteries she tries to solve, but like figures turning sudden corners in a labyrinth, they continue to elude her. Fortunately, she is comfortable with mystery. Beyond her well-documented findings, she believes that reality has layers inaccessible to human consciousness at this stage of its evolution. Of beginnings. All things water, the rise and dissipation of clouds above the sea off Miletus, where a vaporous moon ascends imperial, eclipsing the sun over the ruins of the market gate, the sacred way, and colliding with present realities to collapse experience into language, a voice once uniquely cetacean, now human in reach, encompassing land and sky, and the notion of worlds beyond. As a child, Undine identified with Undine, the tragic water nymph, for no other reason than the echo of their names. She was particularly fascinated by the idea of a parallel universe, perhaps an earlier time in the evolution of a grand design, inhabited by human-like beings. The notion of beginnings captivates her. Privately, she believes the first land creatures did not crawl out of the receding waters that covered the planet then. They flew with 6 wings like seraphim. Incarnation. In the courtyard he appears. Shadowed doorway, yellow window frame, iron barred and locked to hold his language captive. Though she is gravity and contains the message of his lips as she would a kiss or caress, mystified by the favor of gods, their manner of salutation, their sense of metaphor, her robe unfolded to the waist, his wings a palpitation of color. Waiting for the others to arrive, Stanley Harris fills his water glass. Seeing the empty glass in front of Ondine, he absently fills it too, his thoughts on the late arrival this spring of the northern water thrush, one of the migratory species prominent in his research. Cheers, Ondine says. Cheers, Stanley replies, noticing the bird-like delicacy of her hands. They clink glasses. First words. All things water, the philosopher Thales. Yes, the fragility of the Milesians. I studied the runes at Miletus. On the mouth of the meander, I was water then, and now the moon eclipsed. Ondine wishes that humans had evolved with wings. Often in conversation, she will link this desire to her belief in the evolution of all earthly species, animate and inanimate, toward a spiritual oneness and ultimate reunion with the Creator. This ontology extends into her profound curiosity about astronomy, the evolution of celestial bodies, and other such phenomena. Sometimes she dreams she is a moon caught in the gravity of a distant planet and wakes exhausted, as if from a night of lovemaking. Eclipse. The Ionians murdered the men of Miletus, married their widows. Their swords slid like moons over the eye of the sun, slicing blackened ellipses that fell, opening and closing, earthward into noon, the planet itself lifting at the hips. A woman walks a black dog across a white page, her face imperial. Ondine's features are fine, like the artifacts of gold jewelry she has found on expeditions. Gold is another of her fascinations, not for its material value, but because it illustrates for her a proclivity in nature for refinement. Panacea. Night runs liquid across her body, a river, pools in the dips and curves of her back, her legs, trembling like beads of quicksilver on a crucible's lip. Sleep, she knows, is a branch of alchemy, and waking the dross of dreams. Although no longer a practicing Catholic, Ondine has absorbed into her notions of evolution the design of salvation in a loving God. There are days, of course, when she questions all this and wonders, am I merely dreaming, deluding myself? At such times, she feels like the naive child she was growing up in the mining town where she was born. Dream emissary. She dreams she knows no man, conception a covenant, and this a village of aged alchemists, hammering fired metals into shape by night, one day to hear that certain ring. While their golden-haired daughters, garbed in shades of moon and starlight, roll their hoops down pitted roads with wooden sticks like batons to steady and propel a whirring crescendo, unlock the key of a troubling angel. Ondine meets Stanley at a university function. This is the first time she has spoken to him outside of their study group. Here she is taken with his gentleness and reserve. She is conscious of flirting with him. It makes her feel bold. He enjoys the attention and cannot conceal the fact that he is smitten. Ondine easily holds his interest for the entire evening, notions of gravity and motion racing through her head. Second impressions. Ornithology, a fascination since childhood. Flight, I bet. Maybe originally as a boy. And now, it's almost a religion. I wish I could fly. I imagine we all do. Could you teach me? Do you have wings? Will these do? Feathers? Really now, we've just met. This could take some time. I'm an archaeologist. I'm all about time. Dr. Livingstone. Mr. Stanley. Thank you.